Hey, good morning, everyone. Today is Thursday, June the 30th, and we are also going to be recording live on, excuse me, on Clubhouse. Let me get that room started. Oops, hitting all the wrong buttons. So let me introduce myself as I'm getting things up and running. And we are live on Clubhouse. Good morning, everyone. My name is Janis Malillo, and I am the host of Truly Your VA with Janis, a podcast. And I'm actually the host of 3 podcasts, but today I wanted to come on and share why I am so passionate about podcasting and how I got started, the pivots and the turns. Today, I want to discuss how I got started. That's the first question, right? Well, as many pivoted their journey back in 2020 during the pandemic era, I found myself in a position of kind of pivoting. And it wasn't just that I pivoted one way or I pivoted another. It really was a question of how I was going to go forward in my business, support my clients, but also do something in a way that felt really good. Now, I know that sounds somewhat generic, and I get that. So let me set the stage for you. Back in 2020, my sister and I, that I co-host another podcast. I actually have 3. The first one that I started was Two Sisters with my sister, Carol Sue, and we share our love of wellness through fitness and nutrition. Now, wellness, as we all know, is an umbrella, but we are at the time in our 50s and 60s, and I just recently turned 60. And we wanted to do it in such a way that really anybody could relate, whether you were male or female, whether you were in your 20s, in your 30s, whatever it may be. And we are actually very close to, 2 years later, very close to 500 episodes. In fact, I think we're at 461 or something like that. And of course, we will have a big 500th episode, so stay tuned for that. So we started the podcast. Had no idea what I was doing. Honestly, did not know, and I had to learn quickly. So I had called my sister and I had said, hey, we just started our LLC together. We're, health and wellness. She's a gut fanatic, and she's also a mindset and empowerment coach. And I'm a former licensed massage therapist, certified personal trainer, and I'm currently a certified health coach. So we had a lot of information to share, and we were excited to share it. I called her up and I said, hey, we should start a podcast. And her response was, yeah, that sounds great. You get everything up and running. And she was in a hurry and hung up the phone. And I'm like, oh, okay, now what do I do, right? What do I do? I honestly had no clue. Excuse me. So rather quickly, very quickly, you researched it. Of course, I went on YouTube, looked at different podcast groups on Facebook. I was not a member of Clubhouse as of yet, but that would come about 6 months later. And I'm like, okay, figured it out a little bit, tried out a few different platforms, ended up going with Anchor, which is the base platform for all of my podcasts. And we started the podcast. the first couple episodes, if you go back and listen to them, it's quite hilarious because the sound was horrible. I'm not going to lie. The sound was very horrible. I was working off of my laptop. I actually have a few laptops, not the two that I currently have, but the passion was there. And we're just like, okay, it's not perfect, but we still want to share. And we kept sharing and sharing. Again, not really knowing too much about what we were doing. Then we felt comfortable with the process. As you do things over and over, as you start to get familiar with what you're doing, now the next venture was, how do we go live, do our podcast on Facebook? Figured out how to do that. Obviously, we met on Zoom, recorded live to our Facebook page, and then I do all the mechanics of all the podcasts and became familiar with how to load the podcasts. And we started getting in the groove, right? You become familiar with it. You're excited about what you're doing. You're excited that you're sharing something that you're passionate about. And the podcast started growing. We had a couple of guests on the first year. And then early January of 2021, we really started the process. We started out very slow with having guests on. That was like a snowball effect. Again, familiarity, getting quality guests on, having quality guests on. And some of our guests have been on a few times and amazing. Now we're outreaching people all over the world. It slowly began to gain volume. And it was exciting because, again, we met amazing guests, amazing stories to share about their journey of wellness and how perhaps maybe a different health issue that came up where they became interested in health coaching or, becoming a trainer, whatever it may be, and how that inspired others. Now, initially, when we started having guests on, since I'm a certified health coach, we initially chatted about not having guests on that were in our same field. And we talked about it several times and we're like, wait a minute, we are missing the boat here. We are missing the fact that we have an opportunity. We have such an amazing opportunity to share what other people are passionate about as well. Again, the snowball effect took place. We got into the groove. We're having amazing guests on the podcast, and the conversation continued. Now, fast forward to being on, for instance, Clubhouse. I had joined in December of 2021. And that at that time, you needed an invitation to join Clubhouse. So I received an invitation and I joined, but really didn't do anything with it until last year, which would have been July of 2021. And as I became familiar with using Clubhouse, haven't been on it regularly, but now I am starting the process of being on regularly. I currently have about 5.3 thousand followers on Clubhouse, which is pretty amazing. But again, I've met so many people, so many amazing people from around the world. As last summer, as I was preparing for, starting my own business podcast, because I am a podcast manager, I am a virtual assistant, I kind of put that on a hold for a while, and I'll explain that in another episode. And then fast forward to where we are today. And I can't tell you how much I love podcasting. I started my third podcast called Stories That Inspire Us, which was inspired by my son, Ryan Scott. And what I will share about Ryan's story is that last July, he suffered a life-threatening injury. He's okay. He's okay. But it's been a tough year. 11 months, 8 hospitalizations. It's been a little crazy. And the inspiration that I received from my son on one of my visits to Philly is what inspired me to start that third podcast. And the amazing thing about starting that podcast, again, I've met amazing people from around the world. I've been able to be in a position to help these people get their stories out, the stories that inspired them to take action in their own lives. So I want to tell you the reason for me telling you really a little bit about the basis of why I love podcasting is through all the mistakes that I've made, through all the trials and errors that I've made with getting everything up and running. I now have an amazing system. Of course, managing 3 podcasts is a lot of work, but I love it. It's not like it's work though. I love what I do. So I just want to tell you that. So some of the things I want to share in the forum is the type of things that I use and why I use them. So of course, one of the organizational tools that I use is Trello. I have a Trello board for each of the 3 podcasts. And again, I do all the graphics, I do the uploading, all that kind of stuff. I love it. That is paramount. If you're a visual learner, even if you're not a visual learner and you're like, am I going to have to purchase? There is an upgraded version, but start out small. If you're just doing one podcast, you want to start your podcast, you can do it. There is a free version. And as far as uploading the podcast, I upload my podcasts. All 3 podcasts, our base platforms are Anchor. Now, Two Sisters, we are currently on 30 plus different platforms, plus Amazon Music, iHeartRadio. So you can listen to that podcast on numerous different podcast platforms. TrulyYourVA with Janis and Stories That Inspire Us with Janis, again on Anchor and on a few different podcast platforms. I love Anchor for its simplicity. Anybody who is not tech savvy can use Anchor, and I just find it very user friendly. Now, how do you record your podcast? I don't have any fancy equipment. I do have an upgraded Mac computer, and actually a specialist, an expert in this field, instructed me not to change anything, like don't buy a microphone just yet because the sound is fine. So I have not purchased any type of equipment. I am not an expert in that field, and I just want to be very clear about that. But use what is at your disposal. Don't make it complicated. So some of the tools, I just want to go over them again that I use. Anchor as my base platform, and Trello for the organization part. Now, Trello you may not need right away, but it is a great way to start, just to be familiar with it when you're comfortable, when you get to that point where you're comfortable having guests on your podcast. And the exciting part about podcasting is I happened to run across with the Two Sisters podcast an ad on Facebook about podcast websites. And I just want to be totally upfront. Now I am an affiliate of Pod Page, meaning if you click on my link and decide to join Pod Page and have them host your podcast, to be your platform, I would receive a commission from that. So I just want to be very upfront about that. You still do your uploading to your base platform, and for purposes of any discussion that I will share on, about doing videos about podcasting, that's what I'm referring to. You would still upload your your podcast to Anchor as your base podcast platform. What Podpage does is, again, you don't have to be that tech savvy. It makes your website look absolutely amazing. In fact, in the show notes, when I upload this to TrulyYourVA, in the show notes, I will have all the links to the 3 podcasts so that you can see what those websites look like. And the beauty about the pod page is it's easy to use. Like I said, it's tech friendly. They have amazing customer support. And there's different ways, for instance, to filter in your guests. There's a segment on there called registered as a guest. So if somebody is interested in being a guest on your podcast, they would fill out the guest registration. You receive an email that somebody has registered, and you go through that process on how you vet your different podcast guests. There's also a blog feature with Podpage. So you not only have a beautiful podcast website, you have the ability to do blog entries. You can also have a storefront. So for instance, I'm working on my podcast VA services, different packages. And excuse me, and I will have my storefront will be my VA packages and podcast, different services and whatnot. And there's just so much that you can do with it. And I know that I am probably not doing it the justice that it deserves, but again, I will make sure that the show notes, link all my different podcasts that I host. And just keep it simple as possible. Simplicity is the key. And to wrap this conversation up, I just want to tell you that if I had waited for the perfect equipment, for the right time, for the right anything, I would have not started. I would have not met all these amazing people. And a byproduct of what I've been doing in podcasting is I've organically grown my VA business. I mean, how amazing is that? I get to do what I love to do, sharing my passion, being creative, and getting paid, being my own boss. That is so exciting. Oh my gosh, so much more information to share. I hope that you enjoyed this quick little conversation. If you're listening through Clubhouse, let me know. Go on my Instagram, send me a DM. Let me know how you like this little podcast chat. You can always go to my website. And I just want to thank you so much. And remember, if you have a story that matters, whether it's with health and wellness, you have questions about hiring a VA, or you have a story that inspire others, that will inspire others, let me know. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for this opportunity to chat with you today. And we definitely will be doing more of these. I'm actually working on a schedule, and we'll post that update on my Truly Your VA with Janis podcast website. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much. And remember, your story matters.